Hi everybody, my name's Phil Deakin. I'm the Armed Forces Covenant Worker for Warwickshire County Council, and we're here today to have a conversation about the Census 2021 and the fact that it has a veterans question in it. With me, I have a colleague from Census 2021 who is Sally.
Hi, my name is Sally Bannister, and I'm the Office for National Statistics Census Engagement Manager for South Warwickshire. And I work alongside other colleagues throughout the country, as well as the county, Isabel Pemberton working in North Warwickshire, and Anima Chowdhury working in Coventry itself, Coventry City.
Thank you. What people can't see is our colleague Nick Caswell from the Veterans Contact Point, which is a veterans organisation that is based in the north of the county, and he's doing a sterling job behind the scenes with the recording of this. So, Sally, tell us, what is the census and why are we having one?
The census itself is a snapshot of society, and it's taken every 10 years and has been taken since 1801, except for 1941 because of the Second World War. And it's really to pull together on a particular day what society looks like. And then that feeds into what society might need, where there are changes in demographics, changes in where people live, houses of multiple occupancy, where they're more elderly. And so it feeds into local authorities and government itself, into the needs for housing, hospital, and the general support services.
Okay, that's excellent. So the information that's provided helps other people, other agencies plan for the future in terms of what we need as a country.
Absolutely.
So this is the first time that we've actually had a very specific question around veterans in the census. So yes. How has that come about?
The Royal British Legion has been campaigning since 2016, and probably prior to that as well, for the need for a question specifically to ask about veterans, to provide those services which otherwise when regulars or TA or anybody in the armed services goes into Civvy Street, they become a member of the public, where maybe their needs are greater, maybe their needs for housing and family support, mental health services. And so when veterans go into the public, they just disappear. And so by having those numbers, it's making sure that the numbers are counted. And I think even at this point, and I think we'll have to reiterate it throughout, that data is different from personal information. So the personal information, anything that identifies an individual, will be locked away for 100 years. And this is when sort of historians and family tree searchers get excited, because 100 years' time they can find out more about people. But at the time of the census, and for that whole 100 years, everybody just becomes a number, and there are absolutely no identifying features that are allowed to be exposed.
Okay. So in terms of the census, what is the definition of veteran that is being used for the census?
The veteran is anybody who's served in the UK Armed Forces for more than a day, and so it can be one day. Yeah. That means national service, so post Second World War time service, and obviously during the war. So there will be elderly veterans, but there will be also people who served in the TA or the reservists or regular armed forces.
So that's anybody who's been in the armed forces for one day or more, which is the classic definition from SAFA. So there's an awful lot of people that could include, and some of them may be people who won't even kind of consider themselves to be veterans. So, for example, somebody who's had a short career and who might have served 20, 30 years ago, and for them their kind of time in the military is something way in their past. They now need to remember that they were serving and they are now a veteran. and as part of this, we need them to answer that particular question.
Absolutely. Everybody who's served in one form or another in the UK Armed Forces for however long.
Yeah. So there's a few kind of groups to tease out there. So those people that perhaps didn't even get through training, even though they didn't make it through training, they're still considered to be a veteran because they did 1 day or more. All those that have served in the, as you say, the TA, the old name for the Territorial Army, now the Army Reserve or the RAF Reserve or Royal Naval Reserve, all of those, even though they wouldn't necessarily have done the regular time, they are also considered to be a veteran because they served in the regular reserve. There's also another group which doesn't get often mentioned, and that's merchant mariners who have served on a legally sanctioned operation. So anybody in the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, anybody that was involved in the Falklands War on some of the hospital ships that were manned by merchant mariners, anybody that's been involved in kind of piracy operations in support of the military force that was out there, all of those also come under that definition of a veteran. And lots of people won't necessarily recognise that they hold that status. So that's part of why we're doing such an amount of work to raise awareness of that. In essence, also, anybody who's been in receipt of a military service identification number at any point in their life is a veteran. So that's something for people to kind of hang on to. Most people, once they've gone through a little bit of training, they will know their number and it will remain with them for the rest of their life. So hopefully that will act as a prompt. I'm just going to show my screen now because that will give us what the actual question is so we can show people. So Sally, if you could just talk us through that question, please, from your perspective.
Yes, it is a question that you just come across when you are actually filling out the form, and you'll land on here. And basically the question is, have you served in the armed forces or not? So you just select all that applies, because some will have served in the regular and also the reserves. So that would be ticking both questions, or else if just in the regular or the reserves, you just tick one of them, because as it says there, tick all that apply. The no would be somebody like myself who hasn't never served in the armed forces, or else should there be somebody who is serving at the moment, they would also tick no, because it's not that they have previously, they are still serving, and so their numbers will be with the armed forces anyway, so they will actually tick no.
Yeah, so the MOD will know who they are, essentially, because they're being paid as part of their employment. And just to clarify that, in terms of the difference between the regular and the reserve, we're going to have some people that have been in the regulars and have left the regulars and have since joined the reserves. So they would tick yes for regulars, but not for reserves. And we're also going to have a group of people that have served in the regulars, left, joined the reserves, and have since left the reserves as well. And those will be the ones that will tick both boxes. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you for that. Now, one of the issues that's come up in the work that myself and other people have been doing around this are some of the issues about those that served around Northern Ireland and those that really don't like giving information into what is perceived to be a government agency. So if we we take the Northern Ireland issue first. When that conflict was happening, those that were serving in the armed forces and their families were basically told not to tell anybody that they were a serving person and not to wear their uniform in public. And we know that many people carry on that legacy even to this day. And even when they're talking with other people or other agencies, will not disclose that they were in the armed forces because of that time and period in their lives. So one of the things that we need to be clear with people is that they do need to tick that box, and that it's perfectly safe to tick that box. So if you just want to go over the difference between that data that's collected and personal information, and why this is completely secure and it's completely safe for people to identify that they were serving in the armed forces.
I think the one of the main points is that, as I said at the start, that the first census was 1801, and it's happened every 10 years except for the 1941. And there has never been a data breach in that time. I think the other thing to remember is that this is a census, ONS, run by the ONS, but it is run by the UK's largest statistical body, which is independent of the government. So it's not a government agency. It's a government, it reports to the government, but it stands apart from the government. None of the data, none of the personal information will ever be used by the government. It will never be accessible by any of the government agencies, any of the government departments, or anybody outside. And so, as I said at the beginning, as soon as the census is completed, the numbers get separated from the personal information. So the numbers are pulled out and used by local authorities, by charities, by the Royal British Legion, etc., to find out population, to find out the numbers that they want to record, but no personal information. So the two will be completely separate until 100 years later, when those details are released.
Excellent. So when this information is being used, it's very much used at an aggregate level of everybody kind of added together. And even when that information is applied on a geographic basis, the information will only go so far down in terms of a geographic basis. So nobody's postcode would ever be identified through that process.
One kind of amusing example is that everybody likes to know what baby names are popular that year. Well, if there are a group of baby names which are so unusual that there's just a handful of babies being called that name, the ONS doesn't even release that particular baby name, because it could be found, those children could be found, those families could be identified, which I think is quite an interesting example of how they realise that, or how important to ONS keeping that data secure and secret for 100 years is part of their, part of the way they operate.
Yeah, that's really good. So anything that might potentially identify an individual will not be used and will not be released. So that gives people that kind of sense, hopefully, that sense of safety that they can identify themselves as veterans, which is great. In terms of veterans, lots of people think that veterans will just do as they're told, but some of us who are veterans will know that that is not necessarily the case. So what would ONS say to veterans as part of motivating them to actually tick that box in the right way?
Well, I don't know if ONS would, because I don't know if this is the official line, but I would always say, if you opt out, you lose out. Everybody knows how important, especially funding going forward after our last year of COVID, when funding is going to be very, very thin on the ground, that the support services, even family services, school provision for your kids, and all those other support services for housing, as I said, and for health, for elderly care, for just the whole raft of services. Everybody is going to be applying for funding. If there are the numbers there, then you're more likely to get the funding. So in a way, as a community of veterans, people owe it to each other to be able to stand up, be counted, and get the numbers that actually reflect the community of veterans, and so they get the support services that everybody needs. Some will need more than others, but as a community, it's worth standing up for each other.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So one of the issues around veterans is we're working on estimates of statistics, and by having this question in the census, it will give government and other agencies that absolute number of how many we have, you know, roughly where they are, and some sense of what their needs are. And then agencies like SAFA, the British Legion, Help for Heroes, and others will be able to lobby government on behalf of the veteran community, as well as organisations like the Veterans Contact Point and other veteran organisations, to say there is enough of us here and we're clear about our needs. So we need, you know, more support to come the way of the veteran, and I think that's really good. What I would say is, on a personal level, if you don't feel you need that level of support, you need to think of your brother and sister veteran, and you're ticking that box just as much for them as you are for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And veterans have worked in communities. They've known how important it is to work alongside each other and support each other in all sorts of circumstances. So that again translates into Civvy Street, where they're still working alongside their fellow man and woman.
Yeah, yeah. So how does this all happen then, Sally? How do people take part in the census?
Well, this week of the end of February, last week in February, every household will be receiving a postcard through the door, which simply says that the census is coming and that you'll be able to apply online. And if you don't want to apply online, you can get paper copies. Next week, which is the beginning of March, then people will receive through the post an envelope with their unique access code. That unique access code is unique to the household and allows people to go online. This year, for the first time, it's going to be online first, but that doesn't preclude the option of filling out a paper census should people prefer. The online version is actually really simple, and it's just literally ticking boxes like the box that Phil showed, buttons, tick boxes, pressing buttons, and also one or two options to fill in where there is more options available. So the question for the household, so when you receive your unique access code, you can go online, put in your unique access code, and then the census form is up there, and you just go through it. Should take between 10 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on how long you want to think about the questions. Questions are very straightforward. They ask about the household, how many people live in the household, your date of birth, your sex. There are 3 optional questions, one of which is religion. And then, like the veteran question being a new question, which is not optional, there are 2 other optional questions, one of which is on sexual orientation and gender identity. And that again is because the group of people who identify differently to the mainstream male, female, which might be on their birth certificate, they have the option of filling that in. Again, it's stand up and be counted. There'll be more opportunity to have the services for groups of people who have been undercounted up to now. And then the census forms just goes through it, asks about where you're working and whether you're employed, unemployed, your state of your health, and you just have options saying good, not so good, or very, not at all good, and then more or less that is it. And so there's nothing about finances or anything personal like that. So it's a kind of general overview, and that is the idea, is to get a general overview of society, not of an individual. And with that sort of information, that's where it sort of leads forward to being able to get some information or data that services and local authorities, charities can use.
So many people have kind of filled out a form online if you're booking a holiday, for example. So in principle, this is no kind of different to that. You're just doing something online, ticking boxes, filling boxes in.
Absolutely, and the online questionnaire also has some drop downs. So if you're a little bit unsure how to answer, there is the drop down. People who have different languages, which I don't think would apply to veterans, but there are other options online to be able to have guidance in other languages. If people prefer to fill in a paper questionnaire, they can apply for a paper questionnaire just by ringing a helpline number. If they've got problems with filling in the questionnaire, then or just want to query one or two things, there is the helpline now going to be manned by, I believe, 500,000 call centre operatives.
Wow.
So there is quite a lot, partly, well, mostly because of COVID.
Yeah.
And these, they will be able to help with just simple Q&As, or even if people have difficulty, they'll even be able to help them fill out the form themselves. There have been, and it's still in the pipeline because we are kind of floating between lockdown and unlocking, but there are support centres that have been stood up. Now, they might not be able to operate on a face-to-face basis, but it depends how far down the line and how things go. But there are some support centres, walk-in support centres. These might have to operate on a telephone appointment system. And that is, again, something that people can find out online when they go, or else by phoning the call line. We're working, ONS is working very hard with people like yourselves, Phil, and we're trying to keep those lines of communication between kind of community workers. People work within sort of various communities, whether they're veterans, whether they're elderly, whether they're family services and whatever, so that individuals have got people who they relate to. They can turn to, like somebody might turn to, you know, Royal British Legion, people that they might know within those groups and say, I'm having problems with this, can you help me? And so people who are trusted workers can, and obviously friends and family, if you trusted friends and family, can also help fill out the census should there be any problems.
So that's really good to hear. So if you've got that capability of doing it directly online by yourself, that's absolutely fabulous. If you're not particularly IT literate or you don't have the IT technology, you can ask and get a paper copy and complete it that way. And either way that you do it, whether it's online or by paper, there's a helpline that you can phone up and somebody will be able to talk you through the questions. And even if someone needs more support than that, then they can get a trusted friend, family member, or a community worker to actually complete it on their behalf.
If they give permission, they can ask for that sort of help.
One of the groups that we need to be mindful of within Warwickshire is the Gurkha population that lives in Nuneaton. This is because we actually have a unit of Gurkhas in that area, and it's been there for some time. So there will be some who are veterans within that Nepalese community based in Nuneaton, and we need to raise awareness within that community just like anybody else. So what resources are there to support that community, understand what the census is, and to be able to complete it?
There are obviously, community workers working on the ground who will be aware of the census and will make that community aware. There's literature, leaflets in various languages, including Gurkhani, and so they will be able to access that sort of detail about the census, what it means to them, why they're taking part, etc.
And is the census as they would see it online, would that be in Gurkhali?
No, the census online and the paper questionnaire is in English, because it has to be in English, but there will be supporting literature online that they can refer to in Gurkhani.
Okay, thank you. So around the county and around the country, there will be opportunities for people to be able to do that with their kind of local community organisations, and they just need to kind of make that contact and have that discussion. Yes. So that's fabulous, and we really want, ideally, 100% of everybody that's eligible to complete it.
I think that would be fantastic. Royal British Legion have done so much work to try and get this on the census, and it isn't just a matter of asking if they can have an extra question. The census is a legal document. That's one of the reasons why it can only be in English and in Welsh, and the other supporting services are in other languages, because the census by law can only be in English and Welsh. This is the census for England and Wales, which is what this census is all about. And so yes, to actually have this extra question took a lot of work behind the scenes. And so in 2017, the ONS agreed to have it. It was then debated how it was best referred to on the census form and how best the question would work, and how, the sort of data that was needed to be collected. And that's why it is on the form. So yes, it's quite an achievement to get it there.
Brilliant, excellent. So who else is involved in supporting the census across the county and up and down the country? So you've got us from a local authority, we've got Nick from a veterans charity, you've got yourself. What other organisations are involved in raising awareness and getting people to complete it?
Getting people to complete the census. I would say every single department in the county, county council, departments within the local authority, the district councils and the borough councils for the north, the city council in Coventry, universities, because obviously they've got their thousands of students as well, and they run their own campaigns and also work alongside ourselves. Just you name it, most people will be involved in one way or another. All the voluntary services, as far as Warwickshire is concerned, we've got Warwickshire Age UK, we've got Warwickshire Equip, we've got Warwickshire Carver, which is the umbrella organisation for all the charities. We've got parish councils as well. Every parish council's been notified and has put either things within their newsletters, or so it should be really feeding down to the ground that, one, the census is coming, and then two, that there is support for anybody who has either reservations and wants to talk through why they should fill it out, or else have that actual support. And there's the support lines, as I said, and also key workers, volunteers, trusted volunteers, on the ground as well, who can help.
So if anybody wants more information at this stage, where is the best place for them to go?
Well, first, probably if they're online, just census.gov.uk, and that is live now and will tell you, what resources there are. And also next week, people can just go to that website and fill out their census, because you fill in the code in a little box and then it just launches the census. If you don't want to fill out the census all in one go, you can actually stop, go away, have a cup of coffee and come back to it. It doesn't lose it, so it comes back. Filling it in online is actually very slick. Paper is a little bit more heavyweight, because you have to decide, does this next question refer to me, or you have to make that decision to move on. So that's the first option. I would say, from your point of view, Phil, that probably people can come to you for support. You've probably got some support lines as well. Okay,
thank you, Sally. Just to recap then, the census is about where you are on the 21st of March. It's really important, because this feeds into funding and big decision making about what support and services are funded and developed. And from a veteran point of view, we need every veteran to actually tick the box. Be clear that you only need to have served one day as a veteran. If you have ever received a service identification number, that means you are a veteran. And again, as a merchant mariner, if you've ever been involved in a legally sanctioned operation at sea, again, you would come under that veteran category. This data, the personal data is separated out and everybody's given a number. The personal data is locked away for 100 years. People can't access it, whether you're a government department or an individual. And there is no way that any information that you give into the census will be used to be able to identify you from the reports and the answers that are made public. And essentially, you can either fill it out online or you can do it on paper, and there are support services available over the phone line or through local community organisations to help you. Is there anything I've missed, Sally?
No, I think that's pretty good. I think also, you know, that everybody, ONS is so keen, and also your organisation is so keen, RBL and SAFA, they're really, really excited about this question. And there are people like myself holding similar talks with other groups in the other counties and trying to make sure that everybody is aware that this question and that it's a very, very positive move.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Can I say thank you, Sally, for your time, and can I also say thank you to Nick in the background, doing whatever Nick's doing in the background. So thank you very much, everybody. When you get your census forms and your identification codes, fill it in, and if you're a veteran, make sure you tick the box. So thank you very much.